welcome to Something's Off with Andrew Heaton. I'm your host, Andrew Heaton, and my God, you have a firm handshake. It is strong, but warm, much like you, my friend. And the program that you're listening to is brought to you by Meat Bullets, the quickest, deadliest way to inject high-velocity meat into a moving target. I would never encourage any one of you to shoot someone without provocation. However, let's say they were anemic, or maybe even anorexic, and you could tell that they would seriously benefit, if not medically require, an immediate protein transfusion to stave off starvation or iron deficiency. Now, I'm not a doctor, and I don't know how protein gets from a burrito into my bloodstream. Probably it goes through my long intestines, maybe even my medium intestines. Again, I'm not an intestinographer. But it seems to me, if you needed to immediately get protein into someone, and you didn't have a lot of time to send a hot dog on a spirit journey through their gooey plumbing, and they need that protein and they need it now, well, in that instance, wouldn't you be legally justified, at least in most southern states, to fire a meat bullet into their leg? Let me give you another example. What if there were a bunch of starving orphans, and they're on a rowboat, and that rowboat is on a rushing river? You know you need to rapidly get the meat, but they're going to be 2 counties over by the time you can scare up a decent jet ski. In that instance, particularly if you were a safe distance away so that the impact of the meat bullets would approximate the sting of a paintball gun, wouldn't you be ethically required to grab a bolt-action rifle and rain jerky from the sky like an edible version of Dunkirk? I don't need to read any Viktor Frankl to figure that one out. Let's say, hypothetically, that you know the president loves teriyaki jerky. Just adores the stuff. And he's a busy guy and you don't want to bother him. Now, obviously, you wouldn't want to peg him in the face or anything because you could get his eye or maybe get him in the neck, which would be unpleasant, startling. But if you were a pretty good shot, wouldn't it be awesome to shoot a round of teriyaki beef jerky straight into his outstretched hand? Blammo! Oh, wow, look, I've got a handful of delicious conical beef. God bless America. Now that I've got my blood sugar sorted, I'm going to go free some nonviolent felons and balance the debt. Wouldn't that be terrific? So anyway, my point is, there are a lot of situations in which I could see meat bullets not only being delicious, high-protein, high-velocity snacks, but morally necessary ones. Meat bullets from Delicious Munitions. Ready, aim, snack. And now it's time for another installment of How To with Heaton, where I show you a better way, a smarter way. Today, how to file a tax extension. First, head over to Smokey Joe's for a cold glass of Coors Light and some kickin' tunes. Sit at the bar next to the solo young lady who probably wants some company. After you order a drink, pretend like your phone just vibrated. Pick it up and act like you're talking to someone. Oh, hello, Senator. How's the wife? Good? Good, yes. Nice to hear from you as well. What's that? You're inviting me to Bohemian Grove with the other wealthy, important people? I'm flattered. Why, yes, I am very successful and single. Funny that, given all the push-ups I've been doing. Over at the orphanage I volunteer at. The orphanage for deaf kids. Anyway, good to hear from you. Okay, Governor, goodbye. If you're even halfway decent at acting, the young lady at the bar overheard some of that awesome power conversation and she's intrigued. Turn to her like it's no big deal, smile and say, "Can I borrow that menu?" Great, now you've made contact, this is going well. Look at the menu for a minute, and then ask her if she's ever had Smokey Joe's famous cheddar french fries with mayonnaise. Now, obviously, you've had Smokey Joe's famous cheddar french fries with mayonnaise, everyone has, but she doesn't know that. She'll answer, and if she's interested, she's going to take that topic of conversation in another direction, and now you can get comfortable getting to know each other. On your second beer, ask her what she got up to over the weekend. She will say, "Mostly I just filed my taxes." At this point, fly into a panic. Swear a lot, then go to the bathroom to cry, because you're not sure if you're going to go to prison for tax evasion and have roommates with Paul Manafort there in the federal facility. Eventually, when you're done crying, wipe your eyes clean, put on a winning smile, and head back to the bar. "Hey, out of curiosity," you'll say, "if you miss the filing deadline, do you go to prison or commit seppuku or what?" She will tell you that actually, she is a CPA and you shouldn't worry too much. There's a penalty, but it's based on the amount of income you haven't paid taxes on yet. It'll be 5% of your unpaid taxes each month, up to a maximum of 25%. Then she'll tell you some more stuff about how taxes and penalties work, and you'll kind of zone out and think about a 90s cartoon called The Critic with John Lovitz, which is a great program, in my opinion. When she's done talking, say, "Wow, thank you. I feel a lot better. Actually, this is kind of weird, but I feel this kind of connection with you. You know what? I'm embarrassing myself." No, she'll say. "I totally feel it too." "Wow. Okay," you'll say. "Do you maybe want to come back to my house for a nightcap? I have some scotch I keep in a glass decanter shaped like a dragon." Now, she's going to backpedal a lot and say you just met, maybe you should exchange phone numbers, etc., etc. Just keep telling her how cool your glass dragon decanter is and how you think she'd really like it. Eventually, she'll agree to come over. Bring out some lowball glasses and your super cool dragon-shaped whiskey decanter. Tell her she can hold it if she likes. Now, this is crucial. While she's admiring your cool dragon decanter, print out all the relevant tax extension forms. If you live in one state and you work in another, go ahead and print both. If you own rental property in a third state, bad news, you're going to need to file an extension for that too. When you get back to the couch, sit down next to her, making sure you put an arm around her. Be really smooth. "Hey, here's a crazy idea. Wouldn't it be romantic to file my taxes and also to file these extensions?" If she laughs and tries to make out with you, make out with her a little, but then kind of push her away and say, "Geez, sure is hard for me to concentrate on getting an erection, what with all these unfiled tax forms. Let's go ahead and file these taxes. What do you say?" At this point, she's going to get irritated with you. She's going to tell you that it's midnight, she doesn't want to file someone's taxes for free right now after she's had 3 Coors Light and some dragon whiskey. That's when you say, "I'm falling in love with you. I could really see us having children, like a bunch of them, 8 or 9. That's how love-fallen I am right now." As she's absorbing that line, use your pencil to gently scoot the tax form towards her on the coffee table. Before she has any more reactions, give her a long, passionate kiss. And as you're kissing, slowly place the pencil in her hand and gently guide it to the tax forms. And at that point, buddy, if you can't seal the deal, I don't know what to tell you. Friends, last night, Bernie Sanders, equal parts socialism and Metamucil, held a town hall on Fox News, and he knocked it out of the park. He went into the bowels of Donald Trump's media Death Star, and in exchange, Fox gave him his very own campaign rally and televised it, which is a masterful political stroke for Bernie. If Bernie wins the Democratic nomination, and he's currently the frontrunner of announced candidates, he just introduced himself to Trump's base in the best possible light with uproarious applause from Rust Belt blue-collar workers. All those unemployed Appalachian factory workers who bolted from the Democratic Party and voted for Trump, Bernie is laying the groundwork to get those guys back if he takes the Democratic nomination, which I hope he doesn't. For this reason, if the 2020 election were a referendum on intentions, Bernie Sanders would win, or would at least handily defeat Donald Trump, who is only vaguely aware that anyone besides Donald Trump actually exists. However, as St. Milton Friedman would say, peace be upon him, we shouldn't judge policies based on their intentions. We should judge them based on their effects. And many of the legitimately well-intentioned machinations of Bernie Sanders would at best keep poor people out of the workforce, and at worst just collapse the economy. Now, I really, really don't want to have to choose between Donald Trump, who is a hate-mongering P.T. Barnum of American politics and a walking refutation of the conservative idea that character and ideas matter. He doesn't have either. I don't want to have to choose between him and a well-intentioned but nonetheless disastrous socialist. Trump versus a moderate Democrat, or ideally a pro-business Democrat like John Hickenlooper or Andrew Yang, slam dunk. Team Democrat, go. Trump versus Bernie Sanders or Elizabeth Warren, that's the Sophie's Choice election, and I hope it does not come to that. Here to help us sort out the town hall and soothe my troubled noggin is Brian Brushwood. He's the host of Scam School, Hacking the Planet, and Night Attack. He is my big brother in the podcast fraternity, and he is one of my very favorite people in all of the 7 kingdoms. Welcome back, Brian.
Oh, my God. I'm so glad that you're finally having me on so we could talk about Bill Weld throwing his hat in the ring. Finally. Oh, wait, is that not? I got it mixed up.
No, we're going to talk about that later. You know what? I bet we could get Bill Weld on. Do you think?
Oh my God, yeah,
I
absolutely.
bet
That would be amazing. I will fly up for that one.
Oh, good. Oh, cool. We could do that. Yeah, we could do like a late night set with Bill Weld. That could go well. Yeah, I thought we would talk about Bernie Sanders in the town hall. I watched it this morning. I got up early and took a bath and watched Bernie Sanders in the Fox town hall while drinking coffee. It was a very adult morning. I felt very, very adult by the end of it.
You also had NPR in the background.
Yeah, I had
you were
NPR
chasing
playing.
kids around.
I had cello music playing. I was drinking coffee. I had that. I went ahead and got off my parents' Netflix and bought my own. It was adult all around in every capacity it could be.
And it was on tax day. You adulted to the max.
Yeah. I did. I adulted to the max. I know you watched parts of the town hall. What were your general thoughts on it?
You know what was really interesting was it turns out it was harder to find the full presentation after the fact because I missed it live, and maybe I'm just bad at internet. But looking at all the individual snippets and looking at the articles of reactions, it was a really fascinating Rorschach test. A lot of people took what they wanted to from it. A lot of articles talking about how he certainly acted, certainly looked, certainly smelled like a front runner.
Yeah.
That legitimacy, that question of whether or not he could recapture that lightning of the momentum he had 2 years ago is settled at this point. Of course, a fan favorite on the Democrat side was the surprise turnaround when Brett Baier asked people if they would give up their private insurance for a government-run one.
Brett, what were you
Everybody
doing?
cheered.
That was like the O.J. Simpson's trial where they're like, your hand couldn't fit in the glove. Or no,
right?
like, you try the glove out. If your hand fits, you're a murderer. And then, like, lo and behold, the glove didn't. Never, ever ask a question. If you're an attorney or a moderator that you don't know, or I guess, like, if you're sort of an aggressive moderator, don't ask a question you don't already know the answer to. That's a bad move.
And keep in mind also, like that moment, I think was more a referendum on just how insane our current system is.
Yeah.
A quick reminder, a lot of people don't even remember that the whole reason we have health insurance that's tied to your employer, all that goes back to World War II, thanks to government interventionist price freezes or wage freezes. So you had to compete in basically a black market of perks. And so at some point we got used to the idea that rather than spend your own money for your own health care, you had your daddy employer do it. And then we just never gave that up for whatever reason.
Yeah, and has it worked out great.
Oh my God.
One of the things that Martha McCallum pointed out, which I thought was a very salient observation, was that nobody thinks that our healthcare system is in a good spot. We'll do an episode on healthcare at some point in the future. We're looking at a couple of cool guests that I'm excited to bring on. But suffice it to say, I would probably have something approaching Singapore's model, which is to say that there would be a very strong free market element to it. There'd be a pretty strong competitive element to drop it, but there'd also be some kind of safety net to make sure that people had healthcare. Right now, we've got a healthcare model that is, I think, the worst of all worlds in the United States. It is the worst elements of the market, the worst elements of government bureaucracy, and we've melded it together in this horrific Frankenstein's model. And they're apt to point out that it's not a good system.
Yeah, right. Well, in that case, I got to admit, whether I'm a Bernie fan or not, I would definitely raise my hand and cheer because at some point, like we are definitely past the point where what we have is so inefficient that it is a fact that a single payer government run system would be more affordable and would save everybody money. Now, personally, I hate the idea because I want to see competition.
Yeah.
I want to see people making smart purchasing decisions. I'm not comfortable with the government deciding who lives with what quality of healthcare and then what kind of circumstances. There are very principled reasons to not want to do it.
You don't want Donald Trump or one of his appointees in charge of your doctor? Huh, okay, go on.
But it's a testament to just how bad where we are right now that even on Fox News in that circumstance, people would on national television say, yeah, it's pretty bad right now. Literally anything than what we have right now.
I kind of, like I said, I think there's a role for government, and I'm not an anarchist when it comes to healthcare, but I would view my situation as more of a patching up the loose ends than trying to streamline and command control the whole thing. Like I would view the ideal system being something more akin to food stamps, whereas what Bernie Sanders would ideally like to do is, if we're using a food model, it would be like there are people who are starving, therefore we should nationalize all grocery stores, and you would go in and you would, go to the cash register and you'd get some amount of groceries, but it would be given to you based on what the grocery store had at the time and what they thought you needed as opposed to what you wanted and that kind of. Whereas I would be like, a much better system would be let's get the food stamp equivalent of healthcare or some other working solution.
Or to be honest, like I think what we're all afraid of is what if I get cancer? What if I get hit by a car? I think what we're looking for is a solution for catastrophic healthcare coverage. And I think that I could maybe be talked into some kind of universal catastrophic healthcare stuff, but I want a broad marketplace. A lot of businesses use HSAs, healthcare savings, health savings accounts. So you're spending your money when you decide, well, do I really need a new pair of glasses? Do I need the fancier glasses? Do I need the anti-glare protection and all that stuff? Instead, by taking all of those consumer decisions out of our hands, we have, imagine a situation where instead of going to the grocery store and buying what you needed and then paying money for it, imagine you had a food insurance and then you walked into this place and then you ask, well, how much is this? They're like, oh, nobody even knows what anything costs.
Yeah, it's a $30 deductible. You just pay your deductible and then you get as many bananas as you want.
Yeah, well, and so you get some bacon, and they're like, "Oh, are you going to get eggs with that?" And they're like, "Well, I don't know, should I?" And then they say, "Well, I mean, I don't know. I mean, if I was cooking breakfast, it seems like I'd have the eggs just to be safe." You go, "Oh, that's a good point. I should." And then you grab all your crap and you get out there with the giant boatloads.
Yeah.
And then they send a bunch of paperwork to somebody else who sends it to another person who sends it to somebody else, and they figure out what they will and won't cover, and then they get back to you and somehow hand you a bill for $800. It's insane.
Our current system's completely screwed up. I would love for there to be an actual overhaul of that. One of the things that Rand Paul proposed that I think would be a very good, at least stopgap solution that I thought was intriguing was right now. I think that the two things that we have a problem with, or the two things that I see as the main structural elements that are problematic about healthcare are what you've already pointed out. Is that one? I think we're more concerned about the catastrophic stuff. People are worried about getting cancer. They're worried about getting hit by a bus, which is a very legitimate fear. I don't blame people at all, and I wouldn't want to be in that situation. I don't think we want anybody to be in that situation. And the other thing is that people are tethered to their job. Now, I like my job. I'm not besmirching the arrangement that I have. However, I think there are a lot of people that would probably leave their job, if not be an entrepreneur, which is a great thing. However, they're afraid to do it because they've got a family, they're tethered to their work, they can't move out of it. What Rand Paul proposed was, okay, we've got this model of healthcare, employer-based healthcare or employer-provided healthcare insurance. What if we set it up to where you could get it from any type of cooperative organization? So if you wanted to get healthcare insurance, you could get it through the Baptist Church. The Baptist Church would have its own system. But it would have like a national healthcare pool that you would get into. I imagine the Church of Latter-day Saints would probably have a very good one. I think they're very good at having a social safety net for their own members.
Not only that, but they all live forever because none of them are in.
You're right. So they'd have low premiums. They would be fine. It'd be like the snake handling church that'd have the more.
The only problem with the Latter-day Saints is like none of them would cover pregnancies because they would all go bankrupt.
You'd have to pick your plan. Or alternately, like you and me, Brian, we're entertainers. There could be some kind of entertainers guild where we'd come in and based on my conversations with comedians in New York, probably wouldn't be a very gold-plated plan, but it would be the catastrophic stuff. So if one of my comedian buddies in New York, it would be like a legitimate insurance model as opposed to what we have where if something bad happens, we're going to take care of you, but you're probably paying more out of pocket for a visit and that kind of thing. So there are solutions out there. I would love to see any of them there. I think Sanders' solution, he's identifying a lot of the problems, but I feel like my root problem with most of Sanders' policies are that they are ultimately really big government command and control models. And
and there's some massive appeal to that because what he does is very graphically in great detail describe the problem. We are all on board with the problem.
Yeah.
And then the period at the end of his sentence is, and then let's fix it with government. And if you are willing to swallow that pill, if you're willing to believe for even a second that it's like, oh man, I think government could do that, then it's like, well, let's not look too closely at any of this. Let's not talk about any of the governance or the heavy lifting of what this is going to take. At that point, it's like, do the thing. I like the part where you said you'd make everything better.
Yeah, I think Medicare for All is a very good example of that. Although that said, I gotta say, I thought he did a really good job throughout that town hall. I didn't think it was as belligerent as a lot of people thought. Everybody was prickly. I thought, given the circumstances of Bernie being on Fox, that everyone was about the level of prickly I anticipated. But beyond that, we're fairly cordial with one another. But a couple of the times where if they were trying to do gotcha stuff, they failed dramatically on it. He was able to slam dunk, I thought, pretty much every question. They brought up the deficit. And they were like, hey, you want to have Medicare for all? Like here's a picture of the debt clock. Like, look at the giant debt. Are you worried about this? And he's like, yeah, I am. Why aren't you talking to the president about this? And like, touche. The president doesn't. I think he's openly said he'll be out of office by the time all of that collapses. And clearly doesn't care about the deficit or the debt, which I guess more to the point, neither do the Republicans when they're in power. It's usually just whoever the minority party is actually cares, and as soon as they get into power, they want to either build tanks or create the Department of Ballet or whatever it is that they're floating their boat at the moment. But I thought he did a fairly good job on that. He did get into some of the other stuff though, like how are we going to pay for this? And he mentioned like speculation on Wall Street, and I was like, that just does not sound like a good. So we're going to tax people for taking chances? Is that what I'm getting from this?
For investing, for making growth opportunities happen. But before we go into those specifics, I do want to give a tip of the hat to both Fox News and Bernie Sanders. I think it's generally bad that the DNC has decided that they won't air any debates on Fox News. So I do want to give kudos to Fox News for inviting Bernie on, and to Bernie for accepting and having, yes, he was on guard and a bit prickly, and there was a lot of dodging and parrying, but to be honest, it's refreshing to see people at least try to have a real discussion, and that made me very, very happy.
I agree. Yeah, I thought it was a really positive thing. I was surprised that Fox did it. I was particularly surprised in the way they did it because, Fox is not pro-Bernie. There's no illusion of that, and it is very, very, very strongly Donald Trump. But by holding it in Bethlehem, PA, I mean, like on an emotional level, if you're watching that at home and you're not seriously ideologically dug into any position, and that's actually most Americans are like, it's a weird thing where people in media, people in politics, very likely if you're listening to this program, you've probably got a fairly set ideology that you're adhering to. Most Americans actually aren't like that. Most Americans aren't ideological, which is why a lot of the elections baffle the political class and the media class all the time, because it turns out that those lines aren't necessarily there. So if you're somebody that's not ideologically rooted and you're watching it, what you're seeing is the angry working, I shouldn't say angry, but like the probably angry working class people that have been displaced by trade or whatever it is, like basically giving a standing ovation to Bernie Sanders. And I was surprised that they made such a flattering venue for him, but I think that was probably part of the deal.
Yeah, and you know what? I'll bet you're right. I'm sure there was a lot of backroom negotiations when it came to the venue and all that, and this probably felt like a best of both worlds because it would be, the working class folks are who got Trump elected. So I'm sure Fox News thought, okay, these are going to be Trump-leaning people. But then meanwhile, steel mining town and union labor and all that tend to listen to Democrats. And so I think both sides thought that they had a home field advantage, and it turns out that was not true.
Well, and you know what? Like to Fox's credit, if their goal was ratings, then they probably did a really good job with it. If their goal is to stump for Trump, which generally appears to be the underlying goal. Although again, part of that might just be that he's really great for ratings. I don't know, but I share your enthusiasm. I was very gladdened by watching it, and I gotta say, like it would be. I am not rooting for a Trump versus Bernie, as I mentioned at the top of the program. It would be very interesting to watch them go head to head. I think Bernie could handle him. There's a lot of speculation that Bernie he's too reflexive on criticism. I think he can handle his own, and. I think the other interesting thing would be they're both populists, and they actually, like at one point, Bernie said that he disagrees with Trump on virtually everything, and yes, I guess rhetorically, maybe in terms of values, but actually they're pretty similar on trade. They're actually, I'm going to say Trump is basically Bernie Sanders' immigration policy only with fear, hatred, and racism, but they're like on paper, they're actually pretty similar when you remove the rhetoric from it. And then on foreign policy, I think they're kind of similar to one another. So they would kind of match up. The difference rhetorically, though, is that Trump is a divisive candidate who is fueling his campaign based on fear for the most part. Bernie Sanders is an aspirational candidate. I got it. Like there are a few times where I was moved by what he was saying, and he has this message of like, hey, we're all Americans, let's get on board and fix this, and it resonated. It was emotionally powerful.
That's interesting. I didn't see that part of the presentation but when you called him aspirational, I find him very, very divisive because it's a matter of it's us and them.
Yeah.
It's the regular schlubs, and then it's those millionaires and billionaires.
Right.
Speaking of which, he's now
turns out he is one.
cross one of those lines. Yeah. So I think that is a very, very big problem because if his narrative is being the working class hero who's, fighting the good fight, Mr. Smith gone to Washington and all that, it matters that, like, I think he got busted by a liberal video calling out the number of times he used to always say millionaires and billionaires. And then the moment he becomes a millionaire, suddenly it's just those dirty billionaires that we have to take out. And I think that really will be a problem. But man, now you've got me really thinking. In a face-off between Bernie and Trump, you're looking at, I'm trying to think of how many adjectives that I could use that you wouldn't know which candidate I'm talking about. Old, white, rich, divisive, anti-trade, protectionist.
Immigration skeptic. Like kind of isolationist foreign policy. Yeah, it's a
pro-government growth. Oh my God.
There's significant overlap between the two, and they aren't like they're I guess they're flavored. This is a good way to put it. Okay, they're very different flavors. The calorie count is about the same. Like correct. We should be on a diet because we need to drink healthy drinks and foods. But it turns out that so somehow somebody came out with a 6-pack of Coke, and it's like, we shouldn't have this Coke. And they're like, okay, now we have a choice. You can have Coke or Pepsi. It's like, no, we need to be on a diet. Neither of these are good. Yeah. Well, like I said, I really hope I would not to get into rank 2020 speculation. I would love to see more variation in the field come to the fore with the Democrats. Or by that I mean I would love to see I would rather see a centrist or a moderate in the Democratic Party pop up. I'd also love to see Justin Amash run as the Libertarian ticket. I don't know, but I'll nip that one in the bud just because I don't want to go too far down the 2020 hole in general. A few of the other things he talked about. I will say the only moment of the town hall that I did truly cringe at was someone stood up and went, Senator Sanders, the definition of socialism is society coming together to cooperatively ensure that everyone is taken care of.
Oh my God.
What's the problem with that? And
I was like, directly into the camera, and then they said, Andrew Heaton, are you listening? I am going to do your pet peeve and misquote misdefine socialism.
I think I'm honestly going to try this summer. Right now, it's looking like I'm going to be in Iceland for a conference. I'm going to try and broadcast out of there, and I'm going to try to also hit up either Norway or Sweden, maybe Denmark. If I could do all three, it would be awesome, and just talk to them about what's going on over there, because he frequently points to, I think that everyone should have a fair shot. We should have the best standard of living. And, when I talk about socialism, I'm talking about, Denmark and Sweden and Norway. And he's not talking about them at all, because and I would gladly take a Nordic system, which would be two things. It would be higher taxes. It would be a bigger welfare state, but it would also be precipitously lower regulation than we currently have. I would argue that they are more capitalist than we are. They have high taxes, big welfare state. And I'm fine with that. I think if I were running, I think I would do something like, Andrew Yang UBI or something like that, where I'm like, hey, we're going to increase the social safety net. Also, I'm abolishing the Department of Education, the Department of Energy, the Department, I would just have 7 federal departments I would get rid of. And then we keep the others up. But he wants to do all of it. He wants to have the regulatory agenda, and he wants to have the command and control of the economy, and he wants to have the welfare state. And does
he want the government controlling the means of production to all these things?
Well, not for all of them. Although for medicine, yeah. I mean, I think he single payer is in the form that he's envisioning a socialist takeover of healthcare. For other things, no. And I think that is basically just I don't think Bernie Sanders is very economically literate, to be honest with you. I think that he is he's sharp, he's good on his feet, he's an intelligent guy, but I don't think that he's really had much understanding of underlying economics. He's running off of gut and feelings, and how do I respond with righteous responses to something rather than the kind of quiet analysis of it. I think Elizabeth Warren is, in my view, she's a smarter version of Bernie Sanders, and also seems to be bigger on the regulation than Bernie Sanders does, which scares me. But that's a whole nother. We'll talk about her when we do a town hall. But yeah, the definition of a socialism thing, I was like, it's not socialism. Socialism just means the government owns the production of the means of production. That's what socialism is.
So, but you could make a case, if we're being very generous, that he's trying to introduce a new brand, a new catchphrase. He always calls it democratic socialism, which basically let's give him the benefit of the doubt and say he does mean something like Norway with a big wide capitalism with a big wide safety net.
Yeah, he does. And I would, again, I think I would endorse him on that if it had the other stuff. Like, I don't have the exact figures in front of me, but I'm fairly confident that Denmark, Norway, Sweden don't have a minimum wage. They also have a very low unemployment.
God, you know how to talk sweet to me.
Yeah. So but again, it's like they've got a safety net, they've got taxes, but what they're not trying to do is have a smart person in a sweater vest in the capital running all of the businesses, which is the thing that I think is more harmful. I am. Later in the week, we're going to have on a friend of mine, Deanna, and we're going to talk about the welfare state, and I'll get into this in a little bit more detail. I'm more bullish than I used to be on social safety nets provided by the government. I remain very skeptical of government regulations and in terms of unintended consequences. Although I will say, Sanders used the phrase "unintended consequence," and my jaw dropped because at one point I didn't think he knew that phrase. Because like unintended consequence, like for those listening, they're rife. There's some great videos on Reason about unintended consequences where someone has a good idea, or rather they've got a good intention and they do something and it creates all sorts of havoc because we didn't foresee what would happen.
Well, I mean, for example, the state that we're in with our current healthcare system is an unintended consequence of what was thought to be a well-intentioned. Hey, let's not let people exploit the shortage of labor during World War II. We're gonna freeze wages. And now here we are with this. Yeah, and
the current healthcare system was bequeathed to us by extreme right-wing free marketer Franklin Delano Roosevelt. But he did bring up unintended consequences with foreign policy, which is something where I agree with him on that. He basically the Fox host said, if we cut the defense budget, wouldn't that send a message out to the world that we're weak or something like that? And he had a command of the numbers where I think it's 716 billion right, or 716 billion right now. Last I checked for this year, but he said like 700 billion. Okay, he was rounding down. That's fine. But he was kind of sticking it to the military-industrial complex, which I thought was a very salient point. Weirdly, I think him and Trump are not that far on foreign policy.
I was having the same thought because I credited Trump's anti-interventionism to a timidity, whereas I think Bernie has a more principled anti-interventionist policy.
I think that the difference between them in terms of foreign policy, and I've been pleased that Trump has been a lot more reticent than I thought he was going to be. During the election, he came off as he would sort of oscillate between like the most isolationist candidate in American history, but also we're going to have like flying laser tanks that can lay waste to Korea. It was very difficult to figure out where he was. It would not surprise me if he has no actual ideological position whatsoever. It's entirely possible that he's just shooting from the hip or he's outsourcing it to Mike Pence or something like that. But the mode for him appears to be not getting into new conflicts, which great, and winding down some of them. Sanders brought up that there was a joint resolution passed by Mike Lee, a conservative senator from Utah, and Bernie Sanders, and it was to withdraw from Saudi Arabia's conflict in Yemen, which I'm 100%
we talked about this on the program. We thought that was a good bipartisan
absolutely.
idea.
And I hope Trump signs on to that. That would be great. It would be in keeping with him. I think that the main difference between their foreign policy is that Trump is a muscular isolationist. He doesn't want to be involved in foreign conflicts. Good on him. He's skeptical of intervention. Good on him. But he wants to jack up the size and scope of the military. To be very generous, I think you could say it's Reagan-esque in the sort of peace through strength approach. Bernie Sanders, I do not believe, has that. He would prefer to cut spending on the military as opposed to bumping it up, unless it's in his district, in which case he's going to fight for it tooth and nail and has.
Right. Well, and the only contrary evidence I could think of on Trump is some of the mouthing off he did about going in to fix Venezuela or whatever.
Yeah.
But it's tough to know when one of his standard practices is bluff and bluster, which has served him well in terms of keeping everybody else on their toes. Like, I don't know, maybe he really will. But in general, as far as boots on the ground, I'm glad that there are so much fewer of them than we feared.
Yeah, I agree. That is, I think, that's a weird cognitive blind spot the American people have. There's a presumption that Republicans are always more fiscally disciplined and that Democrats are always more dovish, and neither of those are true. Republicans are fiscally disciplined, except when they're in power or if the military is involved, and those are very, very big caveats.
Yeah, man, I would love more people to think of think of all the conflicts that we're involved in as items we're buying in a candy store, and we're like, okay, these are all in your
we bought the
basket right
candy
now.
store, yeah.
Well, exactly. It's like you have all these in your basket. I'm sorry, but we need to get rid of 10% of them. Which of these candies do you really love the least? Like, are you super in love with our persistent presence in South Korea? Are you in love with the city-sized embassy in Iraq? Come on, how much? You can't have them all.
And weirdly, they're too like the. Trump was between him. We've talked about this in the program before. Between Hillary and Trump, Hillary was the more hawkish one.
By a lot.
And there was
and to be honest,
yeah.
Oh, I was going to say. I mean, to be honest, I do not believe in the alternate universe where Hillary Clinton is elected that we would have less conflicts militarily than we do now. I had the strong impression that she had something to prove from day one.
Yeah. Well, and like on top of that, she was generally hawkish in all of her orientations, and or as she would put it, she would want to have a robust American presence abroad. Or presence abroad. And robust American presence abroad means we are intervening in other affairs. We're trying to pick and choose which warlord's going to be the right one, all that kind of stuff. That would, and to that point, like I think Obama got a complete pass on that.
Oh my God.
I mean, Obama was a straight continuation of Bush's second term in office, and he toppled the Libyan government. And he
drone strike civilians,
and then flying robots killing civilians in Pakistan,
and then drone struck the funeral of the civilians that he killed. I mean, it's amazing.
Yeah, he dropped just in his last year in office, according to CFR, he dropped 26,000 bombs on 8 different countries. And I'm like, I don't think you can say he was on a scale, I guess, restrained compared to George W. Bush, if that's going to be the poll within modern memory.
And he won the Nobel Peace Prize.
And he won the Nobel. But in his defense, he won the Nobel Peace Prize for not being George W. Bush. Like he got that before he was even in office. I'll say we'll finish up on a couple more things before we conclude the episode. One of the other things that I thought was a striking parallel between Trump and Bernie was trade. And that's been consistent with both of them. When he brought up that he hated NAFTA, he got uproarious applause from the people in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania. This is Bernie Sanders back at the town hall. Uproarious applause. And I've heard this from one of my friends volunteered on the Sanders campaign, and he said that the unifying thing he found was that there was this sort of non-partisan grudge against free trade and NAFTA. And I am hardcore on the side of free trade.
Absolutely.
I have no time. The only vague credit I'll give to maybe redoing all of this is if it's a temporary, we're going to use tariffs temporarily to try and compel China to abandon unfair trade practices. I don't get that impression, given that Trump has been in favor of tariffs for the last 30 years. But that is this weird overlap they both have on, where they're in favor of restricting trade. They want to kind of build up domestic industry through protectionist means.
Ultimately, that's the reason that Bernie will lose if he faces off with Trump. They are so close that then the incumbents win, right? I mean, it's like on policy, Coke and Pepsi are so close, but the Coke is the one already in your hand. You're not going to set down that Coke to pick up the Pepsi just because it's like, I mean, maybe, the few people who hate the Coke will, but I just don't see everybody acting like anything's going to be different.
I think if it came to that, I think that Bernie would have a very good chance of defeating Trump, because if I think the two of them would figure out a way to differentiate themselves between each other pretty quick. However, if they didn't and it were just running on temperament, I think that most people, even Donald Trump supporters, generally find his piggishness unsettling. And so I could see the sort of folks that voted for Obama and then voted for Trump, and that's about 10% of the population did that, or the voting population did that. I would see them swinging over to the Sanders camp, but I don't know. The final
could be, but yeah. Well, I guess which does bring up one other issue. Is, I mean, he would be 79 years old at inauguration. I mean, that seems like a non-starter. Maybe it might be that Sanders is running for vice president right now. I think we would all love him as a vice president.
He would be a fun vice president, yeah. I think he's in it to win it. Like I think that when he ran last time, I think his campaign staff was like, I thought they thought they would be done within 6 weeks of his announcing in 2016. And were planning weddings and things. They were planning vacations, and then he completely baffled everyone, including himself, by doing well. I don't think he saw that coming, nor did anybody else, because he's run as a cute protest vote from Vermont for the last 30 years. I mean, he's been a cute candidate that Vermont decided to lob at the Capitol. But I think he's in it to win it this time, and I think he's going to try to. And watching him in the debate or in the town hall, he came off as energetic and on top of stuff, and. I think he can probably do okay on the age issue. But there too, he's running against Trump, who's what, like 76? No, a little bit younger than that, maybe 72. How old is he? He's 70 at least, right?
Old enough to know better.
Yeah, because our candidates, with the exception of Pete Buttigieg, are mostly in the older bracket. It's interesting that both the Republican Party and the Democratic Party are fielding so many of these older. Like if you look at like the cabinet and the heads of Congress, Nancy Pelosi, Mitch McConnell, and Donald Trump, the combined age is like 4,000 of these people. They're not. There's no new blood that they're actually putting in leadership, which is an interesting thing. Let's see. Final thing. We'll do a couple of punts real quick, and then we'll end the episode. College for all. One of the things that Bernie brought up. What do you think?
Oh, terrible, terrible idea. I think that the only people who love it are the higher ed institutions that already have inflated a bubble and are providing decreasing amounts of value. Mm-hmm. I think that in general, higher education is a boondoggle, and that we've been sold this myth that if you buy a college education, you are buying increased income, and that's maybe true in the aggregate in general.
You're an engineer,
but not worth it.
If you're an engineer or a business major, I'm a history major.
Sure, but meanwhile, like you're gonna make a lot more money going straight into a trade. Like I have found myself, I've got 3 daughters that I'm like not entirely sure all 3 of them need to go to college.
Yeah, I think you're right about that. My big thing, and that's such a huge message. I know a lot of people that want to have forgiveness of student loans and would probably vote for a candidate based on that. My big problem with that is there's all this breathless bloviating about student loans and the cost of university. Why is that there? Like, don't throw money at it until you're able to discern why it's there. I've got my theory, which is very similar to yours. I think, basically, if the government's subsidizing something, it's ultimately going to raise the price because there's going to be market capture from the institutions that are able to do it. So if I'm Rutherford College, Pendleton in Rutherford, Ohio, I now want to get more students, so I'm going to build a pool and I'm going to build an observatory, and then I'm going to jack up their rates, and then that's going to be subsidized by the next bill for student loans and all that kind of thing. So I think I would probably be okay with funding, say like community college or VOTEC. I'm all right with that if it's actually vocational. But if what you're trying to fund is in effect a market signal that you're a college educated person, I think that would just create a big feedback loop of price.
Basically what we have crafted is this place where it's non-negotiable about going to college. I mean, imagine being 17 and telling your parents, your upper middle class parents, I don't think I'm going to go to college. That's not going to go over very well, right? Mm-hmm. And then, meanwhile, if you cry cost on it, I don't know. To be honest, it's a weird mirror image of what we were talking about in the healthcare insurance thing, because once student loans happen in there, all you picture is big number that I'll owe later, and you don't see the orders of magnitude of difference, and so as a result, you don't price compare.
Yeah, I agree. There's a lot of. I'm glad I was going to go to Vanderbilt for a drama degree, and my parents were able to gently nudge me out of that.
I've got a friend who got a Ivy League education, and she tends bar and looks at her $250,000 debt.
Yeah. Final thing, and just I guess this is a pleasant note. One of the things they ended up on the town hall about was felons voting. What do you think about that?
Oh, 100%. They should.
Yeah.
It is like if you believe in rehabilitation, if you believe you paid your debt to society, it is unconscionable to disenfranchise people. Because think about this. You could, in other countries, people go to jail for political dissent. And imagine if those people, upon being released, were not allowed to vote. Well, I guess they aren't in other countries, but we're supposed to be better than that. We're supposed to be America.
I'm with you. I agree on that. I think I don't think your vote should ever be taken away from you, even while you're in prison. I think
even while you're in prison.
No,
yeah, absolutely.
I think the punishment is that you're in prison, and you can make the sentence very long. You might be in there for life, but
think about how much faster the war on drugs could have ended.
Yeah.
if everybody in prison for a joint was able to vote.
Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly. Well, we'll cap it. We went longer than I thought, Brian, but I enjoyed talking to you so much that we went over by about 15 minutes longer than I anticipated. Thank you for coming on the program. It is always a delight to talk to you. Can you anywhere you want to point my listeners if they want to get more Brian Brushwood?
Yeah, you know what? If you hustle, we're in the last few hours, we're doing free worldwide shipping at, we got kind of like a scam stuff store at scamstuff.com.
Like magic tricks?
Everything from magic tricks to lockpicking sets to spy gear, lots of fun stuff. And then we're doing free worldwide shipping for another day or so.
You're like a delightful mercenary. Thank you very much, Brian.
Yeah, love it. Thanks.
Some listener feedback before we take off today. On iTunes, Stylus What Stylus says, something's off with Andrew Heaton is a fine break away from the Brady Bunch panel windows of blowhard demagogues shouting over and name-calling each other thanks to its affable, self-described tailcoat wearing, scotch guzzling, and politically lonesome host, Andrew Heaton. Oh, I'm going to start crying. Thank you. Its rehearsed content is witty and twisted, while guest banter is thoughtful and diversely rich with a wide range of perspectives. Because I like to support the supporters of content I like, I would like to ask Mr. Heaton and his producer to please post a listing or catalog of sponsors' products so I can find useful gift ideas when our wedding anniversary comes up. Passenger seat grilling, get in the back seat, honey. Snuffy's Diner, here comes our main course horse. Underwater banking, why buy a waterbed mattress to stuff my Bitcoin under when the bank can keep it perfectly wet for me? And of course, the telemarketer harassing and razor-tipped wind turbine solutions deserve to be indexed in some quick reference guide so that we can help keep this fine content afloat and keep our friends and relations surprised by our thoughtful gift and supporting for enlightened dialogue. Keep up the great work. Signed, a liberal capitalist. I know who that is. Hey, man, thank you very much. That's a kind thing to say. I really appreciate that review, and I enjoyed having a scotch with you. Thank you, dude. You can watch this whole show on YouTube if you look for Something's Off with Andrew Heaton, and you can see my handsome bearded face and assortment of suits and the dead bison head we screwed on the wall. Watching Something's Off with Andrew Heaton on your computer will only make you seem more sophisticated and amused at your office or down in your zombie-proof bunker. So go to YouTube and start watching full episodes. I look like the type of professor who won't get what you're alluding to when you say you'll do anything to bring your grade up. Good. Jennings, I think that's spot on. I think it would just be completely over my head. Some 25-year-old or 22-year-old co-ed, I'm like, I just work harder. All you got to do is work harder. Why do you keep coming to my office at weird hours? Remember, you can always tweet me at Mighty Heaton or Facebook me at facebook.com/Mighty Heaton, or even email me by subscribing to my newsletter at mightyheaton.com and just replying when I send it out on Fridays when I remember. I didn't last time. I'm sorry. Finally, please subscribe, rate, and review this podcast. You can warm my heart like the very kind review that we got earlier today. But more importantly, if you think that it's good to have diverse opinions, being thoughtful and funny in a civil context, then rate and review the show. That helps other people discover this here political orphanage for you and me to hang out in. Good day.